Good morning. My name is Priscilla Tennant. Um, I'm an associate pastor here. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm so happy to be with you this morning to bring the message. Our first reading this morning comes from This Here Flesh by Cole Arthur Riley, a book that I really love. My grandma says you'll know it's joy when you feel it in your entire body. She was swaying in a sea of candlelight when it happened. Under a canopy of string lights and stars, her family stretched out across the wooden tables. She looked over, and I stood there in the distance with my father. My ivory gown swept under me like I was walking on a chiffon river. He had his hands on the sides of your face, and you just stood there for a bit, talking like that. I swear that moment fused to me. There was my baby talking to his baby. And I was sitting at a table with people who liked me, who loved me. She sat and watched my uncle and aunt poking each other and warning each other with their eyebrows. She watched my sister and cousin whispering to each other in between selfies, the little girls laughing and safe. And it just hit me, she says. These people came from me. And I was in and outside of myself at the same time. Maybe this is the heart of joy. Our second reading is from Matthew chapter 17, verses 1 to 9. 6 days later, Jesus took Peter, James, and John up on a high mountain to be alone with them. And before their eyes, Jesus was transfigured, his face becoming as dazzling as the sun, and his clothes as radiant as light. Suddenly, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, conversing with Jesus. Then Peter said, "Rabbi, how good that we are here. With your permission, I will erect 3 shelters here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." As an aside, scholars think that Peter was just doing this to try to prolong the experience of this vision. Peter was still speaking when suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them. Out of the cloud came a voice which said, "This is my own, my beloved, on whom my favor rests. Listen to him." When they heard this, the disciples fell to the ground, overcome with fear. Jesus came towards them and touched them, saying, "Get up, don't be afraid." When they looked up, they did not see anyone but Jesus. As they were coming down the mountainside, Jesus ordered them, "Don't tell anyone about this until the chosen one has risen from the dead." The depiction that we just read describes the transfiguration of Jesus. Transfiguration is a complete change of form or appearance into a more beautiful or spiritual state. I don't know about you, but I sure could use some transfiguring. I'm not saying that I need to become radiant in glory upon a mountain. I don't need my clothes to become dazzling white, and I certainly don't need Moses and Elijah or any dead people showing up for a conversation. But a complete change into a more beautiful or spiritual state, you can sign me up for that. If we mine our lives for meaning, most of us will be able to point out some transfiguration-like experiences when something profoundly shifted for us. It's time like these when I want to shift from sermon to workshop so that we can pair up and share our heartfelt stories. We are gifted momentary glimpses of the joy of heaven to sustain us. From time to time, an outward expression of God's invisible kingdom shows up spontaneously. But why? For what purpose? I do think it's to sustain us, to strengthen our faith when God seems more remote and elusive. Or it could be to help us see the deep patterns of life that make life worth living despite the suffering that none of us escapes. Unfortunately, if these experiences can't be ordered up like an on-demand movie, but maybe we can trust God to give us a dose of awe when we need it most. We ought to be on the lookout for these mysterious experiences and allow the awe stories of others to encourage us, even in a secondhand way. Ruth and I recently had a secondhand awe experience at Cosmos during our first lunch when some of us head over to a nearby pizza place to share conversation and fellowship. I'm not even sure how the topic came up, but Jaime, our wonderful minister of music, started talking about a plant that he inherited from his mother, Elsa, who has since passed on, who tended to rare plants in her home greenhouse in California. Jaime's plant gift is 45 years old, and the curious flower only blooms one night per year. Wait for it, at midnight. I wish I had been recording the conversation so that you could hear the enthusiasm in his voice as he described what the plant looks like and smells like, and what it's like to anticipate and experience its blooming. I was fascinated and immediately went home to do some research. If ever there was a flower with the allure of a rarely seen, reclusive rock star, it's the night-blooming cereus, Ephilium oxypetalum. Its star power will draw dedicated, adoring, champagne-wielding fans to gather in remote desert locales to celebrate its one-night-a-year appearance. Adding to the lure is the most beautiful and magnetic aroma of all floral species, which it emits from trumpet-shaped, waxy white flowers. The bloom, nicknamed the Queen of the Night, will arrive sometime between sunset and midnight on a summer night, usually on or close to a full moon. Over the course of just 1 to 2 hours, the petals unfold, and a thick perfume resembling magnolia or gardenia permeates the air to further intoxicate any partygoers fortunate enough to witness this rarity. The night-blooming cereus, a species of cactus flower, is one of the rarest plants to live in the desert, and there's one living in Jaime's home nearby in Elkins Park. And now, for the grand unveiling, here is a photo of Jaime's Queen of the Night. I'm going to pull that up for you. Jaime got especially exuberant when he described the aroma that permeates his home when the flower opens. He turned to Ruth and to me with the most rhetorical of questions. How does the flower know that it's midnight? I'd like to think that if Jaime ever experiences a dark night of the soul, a painful period when we experience the absence of God or what feels like it, Jaime will be able to ask himself that question. How does the Queen of the Night know that it's midnight? Or maybe he'll ask, who is so blessed to be bestowed with the gift of a praying mother who tended to plants and her son with such tender, loving care until she witnessed them both bloom over and over again into exactly what they were meant to be? These questions seem like stand-ins for another profound question. How do we know that God exists and will faithfully return to us even when we experience times of absence? God gives us momentary glimpses of the radiant joy of heaven to sustain us, like Cole Arthur Riley's grandmother's experience of seeing her baby talk to her baby, of feeling deeply loved, of being in and outside of herself at the same time, with the realization that these people came from her. Or the glimpse of heaven that Nyla experienced on her trip to Baja, Mexico, that we heard about when she preached this summer, where she encountered the gray whales, or las ballenas grises, as they're called in Spanish. In Nyla's own words, which I always love to quote, the whales whose eyes I stared into as they stared back at me, the whales whose slick, rubbery skin I petted and scratched and pressed to my lips. I felt witnessed by these magnificent creatures, beheld, seen in purity that felt like being in my original skin. No stories or expectations or roles to play between us, just a meeting of animal body and animal body in a deep wilderness lagoon. Rest assured, you don't have to become a grandmother or own a rare cactus flower or encounter the gray whales to experience awe. At times, we experience awe in the midst of mundane, everyday happenings, like Leslie Hamilton's Facebook post this week, where she shared, "Flat tire this morning on my drive, and it was wonderful. No one was hurt. I was able to safely pull off the road to wait for AAA. The weather was sunny, and my tire blew near a trail, so I went for a walk and got some vitamin D while waiting for the flat tire to be changed." Or my friend Janine, who sent me this text a few days ago. "I have to share that I actually had a pleasant experience at the driver's license center this morning. I went in around 8:45 and was sent right to the counter. The woman taking my picture was chatty and pleasant and was like, 'Oh, that's a nice one. Do you like it, or do you want me to take another one?' I was in and out in 15 minutes, which of course can only mean one thing: the apocalypse is upon us." To be clear, I'm only friends with people with dark humor. A book that I am currently treasuring is by Dacher Keltner. It's called Awe, the New Science of Everyday Wonder and How It Can Transform Your Life. He writes, "The stories I heard people tell reveal timeless truths about awe, about the awe of watching a quadriplegic person, a former athlete, take his first steps while recovering from a devastating injury to his spine, or being in the front row of a Coltrane concert when he was just breaking big, or from a woman in the CIA at Abu Ghraib who discovered her pacifism in looking at the currents of the Euphrates River." Keltner describes a concept called collective effervescence that explains why many of us come to church when we could be anywhere else. He talks about how moving in unison stirs the awe of ritual, sport, dance, religion, and public life. Once individuals are gathered together, a sort of electricity is generated from their closeness, and that quickly launches them to an extraordinary height of exaltation. Sources of collective effervescence shift the rhythms of our bodies to a shared biological rhythm, breaking down that most basic barrier between self and other. As our bodies and physiologies align with those of others, so too do our feelings. A study of emotional contagion finds that as individuals share spaces and daily living as roommates, neighbors, romantic partners, and work colleagues, their feelings come to resemble one another's. Studies find that after traumatic events like a terrorist attack, people initially experience unique perspectives, but over time, individuals' emotions converge. People develop a shared understanding of what has transpired. This convergence in mind leads to goodwill, cooperation, and a transformed sense of self as part of community. Synchronized social behavior includes what occurs in our worship experience, enables the capacity for shared attention. In these moments, we combine separate perspectives into a shared perspective, what you might call shared awareness, a collective consciousness, or extended mind. As much as I am tempted to continue to share story after story of awe, I'm committed to answering the three questions that a sermon should attempt to tackle: what, so what, and now what? We've got the what well covered. We have defined awe as the emotion we experience when we encounter vast mysteries. And like the transfiguration, we know that it can transform us. But so what? Many of us deal with the grind of working jobs that wear us down and disconnect us from a sense of deeper meaning and community. Americans today enjoy half as many picnics as we did 2 decades ago. We have one fewer dear friend in our circle of care than people did 30 years ago. Many of us report suffering from loneliness. In our 21st century life, we have lost occasions for collective awe, and the pandemic certainly has impacted that as well. But not you. You're here, hoping for the best, open to collective effervescence, giving us your shared attention, prepared to be illuminated, and to give credit to the author and creator of every beautiful, awe-inspiring experience, vision of nature, idea, and person. For nothing inspires us more than the kindness, courage, and overcoming of others. And so now what? The divine spirit is beckoning you to go in search of awe. Rachel Carson, the biologist, writer, and conservationist who wrote the influential book Silent Springs, had some ideas for us about how to keep wonder alive. Awe and wonder are to be found through your senses. Look up at the clouds as the sun pokes through, or at the starry night sky. Distrust acts of labeling and classifying. Instead, begin with mysteries that awaken us to systems that we are a part of. Listen for the migration of birds. Follow the tides. Take in the ground of a forest. The fungus and tree roots, which we now know to be communicating via slow neurochemical signals, intertwined in ecosystems of collaborating species. Pay attention to your tears, to your chills, and things that make you say, whoa. They are alerting you to what is profound. Approach the natural world and life with this question: what if I had never seen this before? Go enjoy wonder-filled explorations that lead to epiphanies, knowing that, as Rachel Carson put it, those who dwell among the beauties and mysteries of the earth are never alone or weary in life. As Cole Arthur Riley's grandmother put it, you'll know its joy when you feel it in your entire body. Maybe your experience of awe will be like a rare blooming flower that God uses to say, do not be afraid, you are my beloved, on whom my favor rests. This is God's good news. Amen.